very closely on a day-to-day basis. Rohan's, as I said, he's the coach lead for the Olympic swimming team next year. He's been to World Championships, Commonwealth Games. He's coached Olympic gold medalists. But what I really love about working with Rohan is he is involved in the sport from grassroots all the way through to high performance. He hasn't just worked his way up and just then parked himself exclusively in high performance. He's still really connected to the whole pathway of the sport. And that's just an invaluable resource to be able to plug into. And he's got a lot of experience in swimming across his whole life as a swimmer in the US, and then moving out to Australia and really starting in regional Australia and having to carve out a business and a profession for himself. And he's obviously had great success along the way. So the beauty about listening to Rohan and having a chat with him is everything he says is relatable to a local club setting. And so I'm really privileged to be able to work with him every day, and I'm delighted that he's been able to share his time with us tonight. So the way we're going to do it, Rohan's just going to have a bit of a chat, and I might ask him a few questions, and then it's just an open forum for people to ask questions. He'll share his reflections on things, both around how we're managing or what he's doing during this COVID time, but just more broadly about creating success in a sporting club and in a performance environment. So, Ro, thanks for joining us, mate. We're really appreciative. And what have you been up to the last 6 or 7 weeks? How's your world changed?
Well, thank you very much for, first of all, having me. And I will preface the accent you hear is because I spent a lot of time in the States, but I was born in Melbourne, and I am an Australian, so don't hold the accent against me. So what have I been doing? Well, I think, Jace, what we've all trying to be doing is staying connected to our world, which for me is swimming. Swimming's I'm a lifer, so I've been in the sport since I can remember. And obviously we've never seen this before, but as soon as we kind of had a full shutdown of our sport and a shutdown of society, and a lot of us older folk don't maybe operate on this virtual world very much. It was really, for me, it was getting used to living in this space and connecting and getting in contact with people, and then trying to help them do that as well with their athletes. And our whole aim was to keep our community connected until we ride this thing out and can get back to back together and enjoying each other's company. So I think a lot of the experiences I had through my life through sport, I tried to kind of filter them down and just come to the core things that were happening. And one of those things was, well, the four key pieces of what we were removed from. We were removed out of, and this is the athletes, everybody, routine was removed from us, structure was removed from us, the social components were removed from us. And then probably the big piece was that I didn't understand till a little bit later is the piece of for athletes in particular, even for myself when I was on pool deck, was that when you're in an environment with people who you're with normally and you can be yourself, there's a level of trust where you actually are probably asking for help a lot more than you realize. So for instance, if I'm a coach and athletes come in, I can read the athletes a little bit and I might have a bit of a chat with them. How you going? How was your day? Oh, I didn't have a great day at school. Oh yeah, you can give them a bit of distraction and you help them along their way. That's gone. And I didn't realize how influential that was. One, for the athletes themselves, but two, for the coaches who get their cup filled up from being able to do that. You get a really lift from actually being able to kind of keep people's spirits up, and all of a sudden that was gone. So those are the four things we focused on: is how to get people back together, create some routine for the kids, get the coaches creating a routine, giving some structure, building the social connections again through this space, and actually getting people comfortable to actually, ask for some help. And I've had a few coaches, as you know, Jace, we've got a few coaches who have been made redundant, and we're truly trying to maintain them in our coaching community so we can help them. So that's been the gist of the 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it's been so far. It feels like 2 years. So that's probably a short summary. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about the specifics, but that's about what I've been doing.
And Ro, just before we open up, so your role generally, can you just give guys a snapshot? So you work in the whole world of swimming. You've got a learn to swim business that you're part of and a club that you're part of, and you're employed at a national level to help us be successful when it matters at the Olympic Games. Just describe your gig and how you normally spend your time in this sport outside of COVID, and then we'll dive into some conversations and go from there.
I've got two roles. I started with one, and now I've got two. So I'll talk about the first role. I coached up until Rio. I finished at the Rio Olympics and decided that I had enough of what I call on-deck coaching or active coaching. I was the high performance coach at Nuttawading Swimming Club. And that role that I had there was basically working with about 10 athletes, ones that are aspiring to make the national team. But I also worked with the coaches. I really enjoyed working with the coaches within our system. Nuttawading has a very large pathway system. So from coaches that are coaching 10, 11, 12-year-olds all the way through. So I'd work with them on their development as well as the athletes' development. So when I finished Swimming Australia and Swimming Victoria, had talked about getting a state head coach, what we're calling a state head coach, to lead the athlete coach development programs that operate. Every state has we'll call a pathways program, and it needs to be coach driven and athlete focused. But what was happening was very much around all the states, athletes participate, but the coaches don't really. So we kind of position, there's four people me plus three others that are in the role around the country. And our job is to work with the state associations. I work with Tassie as well. And our job is from a Swimming Australia perspective, is to get the states and to invest into a national strategy. So we'll create a national strategy for athlete coach development. In short, my job is to create the next 20 swimmers that are going to represent Australia from Victoria and Tasmania, so collectively, and the next 20 coaches that are going to be senior coaches on the team. That's effectively what the program's outcome is. We want to prepare those. So I run a series of training sessions on weekends, or I go visit the coaches in their home programs. So it's a combination of challenging them a little bit and also providing them with extra experiences that are going to kind of enhance their capacities. With probably 4 years into this, we're really looking at what are the really key components that these coaches need to have and the athletes need to have, and then how we can kind of accelerate their development. So that's my current, probably most of them, 80%, 70%, I'd say, of what I do. And then the other bit was, was Pat. Is that Pat?
Yeah.
I know Pat. His daughter plays basketball with Abby. Hey, mate. And the other role that I picked up in 2017 was effectively an assistant to the head coach on the national team, traveling with the team, which I'd done for many years. So I was kind of part of that. And how that came about real quick was at the Olympics, I had 5 athletes that I was looking after in my group. 3 of them were mine, 2 weren't. Some of them swam at the day 6, 7, and 8 of the Olympics program, and some of them swam day 1, 2, and 3. And what happens is you don't want to take your athletes that are swimming day 6, 7, and 8 to the Olympic competition pool where it's a very high pressure. You want to keep them away and let them just chill until they have to go to compete. So you spend the majority of your time with them at the training venue, leaving them and then going to the competition venue. So a lot of us coaches were doing that double time. And we had said at the debrief, we said it'd be really good to have an experienced retired coach to come on tour and just look after the training pool and look after those athletes while we're at the competition venue. So that's basically the role I play. I travel with the team. I'm really an assistant to the coaches on staff in camp. So 5 weeks away, I spend 3 weeks in camp basically supporting them. That's basically in a nutshell what I do. So I also work with the head coach year round on basic national team strategies and that.
You make it sound so simple, right? It's a bloody complex gig, and you're dealing with the human condition all the time, which is really challenging. So that's Ro's background. So we've got a mixture here of coaches, and we've got some players, we've got some junior parents. Here's your opportunity to ask Ro from a clubland all the way through any questions you might have, or things that you're wrestling with right now as we go through this time about staying connected, staying motivated. I was talking to a senior player yesterday who was talking about motivation at the moment. Not having competition in sight has an impact on motivation. So all those things are common across sports. So Ro is here to have a chat about that and answer any questions. So fire away, guys. If you've got anything you want to know or share or ask, here's your chance. Hannah, are you able to moderate it?
Yes, who wants to speak?
Tony, stick your hand up and we'll get to you. Tony Nielsen.
Yeah, hello, all. Thanks for doing this tonight. It's really good. Just one question I've got is swimming. I know it has its variety, but can be a bit monotonous with swimming up and down a black line. As a coach, what can you do for potentially cross-training and motivating swimmers for long hours of time to get the best out of them and doing different skills other than swimming to keep their fitness up and get them engaged?
So we're talking about right now, actually, while this is happening, or just
in general, forgetting COVID.
Yeah, look,
in general.
Yeah, well, obviously they're forced to do it now. So there's probably a lot of coaches that are doing things that they traditionally wouldn't, because there's a few coaches that they like to swim as much as they can because they think it's all about, the 10,000 hour rule or whatever, they do a lot of the same thing. My personal upbringing and background was influenced in the US and college environment particularly, and that was athleticism was key. Athletic development across a number of factors was important. So I kind of always took that into my coaching. So for me, it was a number of different factors. So, from boxing to running to cycling to ball games, once a week we'd play some sort of ball game, an hour out on the field playing ultimate frisbee, for instance, is a great cardio workout. If you ever played ultimate frisbee, it's full on. And the kids like it. So there's a physical aspect, but there's a social aspect because, as you said, their face is in the water. I felt that I was doing a couple things. I was able to develop athleticism, which meant that as they got a little bit older, they were a little bit more robust and resilient in learning, physically and mentally, but also felt like I was keeping that social connection going with them in the sport, which I had a high retention rate in my programs because I felt that they just liked to come to training because there was some varieties, but we never got away from what were the core aspects. You need to do the work in the pool. You need to do the work, but it has to be done really, really well, really smart. So the smart training balanced with the variety around it. And knowing when to do that, like reading your group, like coming in and going, today's just not the day we're going to flog them. Today's a day where I'm going to have to do something different here because I'm going to lose their interest. So it's just reading the group as well. So having that confidence to switch it up.
Thanks. Great answer.
Can I answer your question?
Yeah, fantastic. Perfect. Thanks.
Mr. Gallus.
Thanks for coming, Rohan. Appreciate your time. Obviously very busy. What do you see as the greatest challenges for young kids going back into community sport based on what's happened over the last 6 to 8 weeks?
I see it's a challenge, but it's an opportunity, and it's up to us who are in the leadership of the sport to look at it that way. I think the expectation on their ability, they're like worrying about they're not going to be as good as they were before because they've stepped away from it for a period of time. So for me, I see it as an opportunity to bring them back and upskill them from a fresh start. So one of the things with swimming is repetitive poor technique, right? It just ingrains in them. Now they haven't done anything. Really focus on good technique at the beginning. Teach them the skill early. Give them confidence that their abilities aren't going to change. But go into more of a technical and a skills-based focus because they've actually stopped re-embedding that poor skill that they may have done repetitively. So to me, that's an opportunity. And there's probably a broader cultural opportunity, which is we've done things for so long the same way, and it's really hard to change while it's in motion. Now it's stopped, so we can reintroduce things in a really fresh way. So I think the creativity that we have, the opportunity to create good creative environments with these things in mind is important. I know I answered a few things there, but simply put, teach them good skills up front, and take the opportunity while they're had time off.
Thank you.
Michael, did you have a question, or were you just moving your camera?
I got a question. So just coming back after a layoff like this, when I guess everyone's had different degrees of, either being able to do skills work or fitness work, where would you kind of put the emphasis when you kind of come back around sort of skills versus fitness, or how would you blend the two?
I just missed that. So you're asking like which would I prioritize? Is that what you're saying?
And how would you blend it, right?
Yeah.
What would you be working on first and second and third?
Yeah, I think the first thing for me is skill, because I think if you do it with an underlying fitness component. So I break it into like three categories. If I take in a season, I go skill development, skill conditioning, skills competition. That's kind of how I look at it for young people in particular. So the first thing is, if I'm doing just basic skills work and they're entering with a low level of fitness, just doing that skills work is going to take their fitness forward. And then it's a matter of adding some pressure around the skills. So you're doing some pressure to make the skills, them have to operate with fatigue. That alone is another conditioning aspect. I think what I learned over the years from myself was they should be combined. You should be doing those things together. But the load of like, I guess the volume and load of the conditioning work lifts with the volume and load of the skills work equally, rather than going just skills and then, or just conditioning and then, all right, we'll do skills now and then we'll go, like, have them sit together. I can talk to you a little bit like from a swimming perspective, what that would look like. You can swim, you can put kids in the water and say, swim 1,000 meters straight and that'll be aerobic. That'll hit them aerobically. Or you can put them in the water and say, let's do 20/50s, one lap at a time, which is 1,000 meters. And each lap, you've got to focus on a really key skill component. You're going to get the same volume in, but you're doing skills and the conditioning together. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, Mick, go, mate.
Rohan, you work with the Australian swim team and obviously work with a lot of elite athletes. Is it, do they become elite due to their mental strength, or would you say that's more specific? Obviously, watching the Michael Jordan series going through, his mental ability to just be so far above anyone else seems to push him and then bring the team forward. Do you say that's the most important thing of an athlete becoming elite?
I say I'll use the term competitive IQ is the most important thing. So if you put an athlete in front of me, swimming, doesn't matter what sport, their desire to win will ensure that they're going to do the work, right? So that's the two kind of sandwich. In the middle is their ability, their capacity of talent and ability to excel within that sport. So they've got to have the competitive IQ. We've all seen very talented athletes who just don't have that overriding desire to win. When the pressure comes, they don't show up. But if there's no pressure around, they're excellent. And then you'll see somebody with maybe not as much talent, but their just desire to win will just override, and they'll also be the ones that will go and do the work for you. So for me, when I look at the athletes I deal with on the national team, and I go, swimming's not like a combative sport, but it's a competitive. They do not like losing. And if you play any sort of games with them, cards or anything like that, you really see that competitiveness. So when I watch the Jordan doco, and I love, I was always a Bulls fan, lived in the States during that time, and was fortunate to be around that. The guy hated losing. It was just like to another level that I've never seen, by the way, but I've seen some athletes like that. And that's what I say. Competitive IQ is really critically important. If I could just tell a story, I was in the UK in the late 2000s, and we were in Manchester, and we got into the Manchester United training grounds, and the first team was away, so we didn't get to meet Ferguson and those guys, but we met with his 2IC, the guy that does all the recruiting for the team, runs the development academy. And I asked him this question. This is where I got this from. I said, what is it that you're looking for in a player? And he wrote it on the board. He wrote competitive IQ, skill acquisition, and fitness. He said, we can improve fitness. He said, they got to have talent to be able to acquire skills. He said, but if they don't want to win badly enough, those two things, they'll never put enough into it. And he talked about how they put players in game-style situations and watch how they deal with different aspects. And they just go for the people who want to win all the time, and that's what they look for. They will pick that over anything else anytime. And it resonated with me, and ever since then I've been looking at it from all sport angles. And I think you just got to want to win more than anyone else, more than the person next to you, I think.
Thank you.
Rohan, do you want to just give a snapshot of the tour you did earlier this year over to the US, where you visited a number of different pro sports that everyone here will know about? And what I found interesting about that is sometimes the ones that had the biggest brand actually were not the best. And that's a really fascinating insight around what makes success.
Yeah. Yeah, very fortunate. I went on an 8-day tour to the U.S. with a number of different sporting coaches. So the head of performance from Melbourne Storm, Lachlan Penfold. Then we had Melbourne Footy Club, Simon Goodwin, Alan Richardson, and Justin Plapp. And then Brisbane Broncos, Anthony Seibold. So there was leadership from different sports, as well as myself and 3 swimming coaches, Olympic level swimming coaches. And the whole purpose of the tour was to go to some sporting and some different industries and look at how they collaborate and how their high performance functions, like what are the key components to high performance, kind of how they interact, ultimately around the product or around the athlete. So it was really all about how they enhance the athlete and the product. So we went to a few Google and a few other places. But so to Jason's point, so we went to the Giants, San Francisco Giants baseball, went to the Warriors, Golden State, went to where else did we go? We went to the Dallas Cowboys, Texas Rangers, and went to college. We went to UFC, UFC fighting place, Circus Delay, and then Google and Halo Sports and alike. What was interesting was the Warriors were all around athlete empowerment. Coach Steve Kerr, you can see his influence from, say, a Phil Jackson, very much about just letting them be themselves, but really creating a competitive environment. They play a lot of games, like they're really competitive all the time. They're always stimulating it. We met with one of their coaches who talked about the relationships that they build and trust and all those things. So it was you could just feel that, and the staff that worked in the organization were very much involved. And it was very simple. It wasn't, you walked in there and it wasn't in your face. They talked a lot about what they did. The San Francisco Giants, their office, so their front office, for a better term, and they're have been there for a long time. So they're very integrated into the playing field group. So there was a lot of interaction between them, and they've been a successful organization for a long time. But the Dallas Cowboys, like, it was all bells and whistles with no substance. Like, they were just, love the Cowboys personally. I like the Cowboys, but you could just see they weren't going to be successful because you had signs everywhere. Like, everywhere you turn, there was another catchphrase about what they were about, but they couldn't explain it. And I thought, we walked out of there and we all said, just doesn't, like, yeah, you could wear a Cowboys hat, but I don't know if, and I look back and I think one of the most obvious things that came out of it was they had their linebacker captain. It was a day before a game. We were in their training facility, and he came in and he was wearing a hoodie, a Cowboys hoodie and tracksuit pants, like just basically walked up to us as a group, introduced himself. He's like the captain of the defense. He said, "Oh, how you going? What are you guys doing?" He was there doing some study before the game that night. He went in and sat down. And then we see this other guy walking through. We got a full white Adidas bling bling tracksuit on, and he's got this entourage with a camera following him. And we said to the guy taking us on a tour, I said, "Oh, who's that?" And he said, "Oh, that's our new linebacker rookie guy. He's heavily recruited." So what's he doing with the camera crew? And he goes, "Oh, I don't know. He's probably got his own thing going." And then one of the coaches said, "Isn't Dallas a Nike club?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "But he's wearing Adidas, all the Adidas kit." And they said, "Oh, well, they do whatever they want." And so I'm looking at this one team, one us, and then I'm looking over there and going, that just doesn't resonate. So for me, it was a lot of false bravado with them, and whereas the other organizations that have been successful had a real authentic feel to them, and it was a lot about their front office and their field, the coaches and everybody just seemed to know each other and interact. And Dallas was it's a $5 billion company or whatever it is. This doesn't have any substance to it. So that's kind of the experience I got just in relation to club stuff.
Who have we got? Sorry, I'm just scanning across. Yeah, Mr. Gallus again. Go, mate.
Yeah, just mentioned how important club culture is. What do you see the key points that a junior footy club like ours need to work on?
Well, I think there's really 3 points, and that is the parent, the coaching, So your parent group and the athletes together are the clients. That's how I see it. So I know in junior swimming, I talk to coaches about, like, you've got to treat the parent and the athlete like as they're your client. You got to keep them informed, right? So coaching is about working with both. But the other really important piece is the administrative support around it. So the community that sits around it. So whether it's communication to the group as a club, social function club, financial fundraising, whatever it is, that's what I call that. That's a local level sport administration. And those key components exist all the way through. When you get up to professional sport, you look at it's the coaching expertise, it's around the athlete, support the athlete, and then it's the sport administration around it, which is your club kind of, your Collingwood, let's say, or your whatever footy club you want to look at. So at a local level, I think it exists in the same way, but it's more of a community focus. So that administrative support is creating that community. But I think the coaching for me, particularly in swimming, is you need to keep your parents informed and connected as much as the athlete is. And I think, I don't know, I mean, I've never had kids play footy. Basketball is the closest I come. And I know that because it's such a subjective sport, I would suspect, you really need to keep the parents informed because, and again, it doesn't mean they agree. It just means that they feel part of the system. And if they're this is just about the athlete, you guys are over here, I think you cause yourself some challenges. So that's kind of how I see it. If I'm going to go back and run a junior club in swimming, I'm bringing the parents along for the ride as much as I can, and with the good and bad. I want them there, being able to communicate with me and keeping them informed. Yep.
Hey, Youngie. Take yourself off mute, mate.
I'm happy to do that. So yeah, I think the reset really resonated with me, Rohan. So thanks for that. The opportunity. We've got a couple of challenges coming out of COVID. One is the re-engagement of the parent group. So you've touched on that. The one that's I think is going to be a real hard one for us is our player pathway. So we have a fairly structured pathway for players to get through to AFL, and it's not so much about that every kid's going to play AFL. It's about having them be the best they can for us, and being fair in who gets into the representative team. So all our representative teams, all of our TAC teams, everything being put on or cancelled for the season now. So that decision's been made. And we had nearly 20 kids on those lists. Half of those half of those teams made their final selection, the other half hadn't. And so we've got a real mixed bag of kids on different parts of that journey, plus the whole selection process for next year, which the EDFL no doubt will stuff up. So really just trying to work out the engagement of those kids and what else we can do for them. Because I just think, from 5 years ago, we had 4 teams, or 6 years ago, we had 4 teams and 80 kids, and we've rebuilt, to over 300. And now to lose the pathway, which was almost like the crown, I just feel like it's going to be a tough slog to get back into those development teams. Long question, but really just a bit of a situation.
I guess my first, the way I will look at it is everybody's in the same situation. So it's not like I wouldn't think you're on the sidelines, everybody else is running. So as far as competitive opportunity, they're there to be regathered and brought into your space. As far as the practical coaching side of things, obviously that's not available, but what does engagement look like? Like, what would be the first step in engagement? You're probably already engaging. What are the parents' expectations of what can happen? We're dealing with that right now with in swimming, is expectations versus reality, and we've got to find that balance. But it comes back to communication. But I think the beauty of it is that at some point somewhere the club started from scratch. I don't know how long the club's been around, but you would have had to build it from you said 80 to 300. So what were the things that you did really well in that 80 to 300? What things can you do right now to move in that direction? There'll be things that you can't do straight away, but that's where kind of being strategic about it, and just saying, okay, well, what's a realistic target to get a re-engagement? Have you done a survey? I'm just asking open-ended questions, but have you done a survey of how many people are willing to come back as soon as the opportunity presents itself? And it's not to compete. It'd be just to come back into the club environment and start training again. I know we're doing that right now with our swim school and coaching, and the squads program is my wife's communicating with clients and saying, who's interested in coming back when we have the opportunity to open, blah, 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 and getting some sort of general feedback and engagement there. But not obviously having answers to questions that may or may not come, but being available. So I guess I'm kind of throwing it out there, but to me, I think it's, why can't you get back to 300 or 400 further? And it may take 12 months, 18 months, but you've done it before. So, and you're not competing, like you don't have somebody down the road who's open and taking your members from you.
Yeah, so probably our member base is reasonable because we've done all of our pre-season sign-ups. So we had over 80% pre-season. So we've done some math on that, but we haven't fully re-engaged that group in terms of who wants to come back. We're just fielding questions of when can we come back. So I think the spirit amongst the cohorts and having, a reasonably good size and active committee and coaching group, that's a fair representation to start with of those that are keen. They're leaders in their own rights. But the player pathway one's really tough because we'd sort of just cracked into it. We'd really just, previous years we probably had, 5 or 6 kids.
How old are those guys?
13 to 17.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I think the social bit is the bit, for me, the social bit's the bit that's going to get people back into sport, like wanting to get back. That's why every time I'm on a call with kids on squads and that, one thing they want to get back to is being around and being face-to-face with mates. The training and the development and the performance side of things will come. You get the environment where they come to it, and then you just let that happen, and then from there you shape I think the performance piece and those pathways, those connecting pieces for you guys through to, AFL, VFL type level will come again. But get them, I like to say, get them in the tent first. Yeah. And the social piece is the thing that's going to bring that age band back. And being active, just being outside and probably getting away from their families so they can get away from their brothers and sisters or whatever. But definitely, I know I can't wait to get my kids back in organized sport. Like for selfish reasons, but also for their development as well.
Thank you.
What else have we got? Yeah, go Roscoe.
G'day, Rohan. Thanks for tonight. What have you been doing in the last few weeks to keep your swimmers and coaches motivated? I coach young 16 boys and I started an Instagram page early and it just lost momentum. And then it was sort of the start of school again. And so I really haven't found another spark to try and re-engage the group. So any ideas? So I suppose the first part is what have you done? And the second part is what do you think I can do now until we sort of got the all clear to at least train 10 at a time?
Well, I'm very fortunate, Ross. Like I get to look into what coaches are doing. So I work with the coaches and I get to see a broad range of programs from performance down to club level. And I get invited into some of their meetings or Zoom meetings or whatever they might be. They'll bring me in to say hi to the swimmers that I would normally go and see. Some of the things that I think have been really successful, and I'm happy, Jace, I can share these through to you guys so you can see what some of these coaches are doing. And I think they're having regular catch-ups in this forum like this. Surprisingly, everybody just wants to see somebody's face. So it's a weekly catch-up, just a connection point. And it's not about anything other than how you've been going. Go around the room. How's everybody going? So that's really actually been, for me, I do it with coaches twice a week now. It was started once, and I thought, oh, they probably want it every fortnight. We now have a formal catch-up where I bring in a guest speaker, and then we have a happy hour Friday night where everybody just gathers. That's coaches, by the way. They've been saying that they look forward to the athletes are looking forward to just that social catch-up. So that's the first piece. From a training point of view, a really cool one that was done the other day, which I thought was really cool. So the athletes had to go out for a ride. They had to ride, and this was a performance squad. And the challenge was to draw a picture with their maps, so that the trace of their ride had to be a picture. And again, Jace, remind me, I'll share it. You can see these. They're unbelievable. These guys, some of them drew one girl did a teddy bear around the neighborhood. And you see, the snapshot of the map. So having weekly contests where they're doing their training, but within the training, they've got a contest. That one has been really popular. The other ones that I think are good are having buddies, training buddies for the week. So that if you're prescribing some sort of training with them, so they got to actually hook up with the buddy. Now you can actually physically get together, but before it was touching base with them, saying, I'm going to go for my run now. Okay, you go for your run now, and then they organize it. So they have to be organized. They're probably the things that I think have been, that I've seen that have really kept the momentum, because you can make those adjustments. You can switch the training buddies around. Every week, somebody's got a different story about what they've been doing, and giving them some sort of competition within their normal training regime. But you can't go past just getting them together once a week to have a chat.
Okay, thanks, Rohan.
No worries.
And just on that, Ro, one of the things that we've now got as a footy club is this Zoom account. So if coaches want to have times where you arrange for your teams to come together, just for even 15 minutes to say good day and talk about stuff, as a club, we've made that investment into this online asset, and it's, we would like you guys to have that ability to use it as well. So if any of the coaches are interested in pursuing that and you don't have a Zoom account or whatever, or it's difficult, get in touch and I'm sure we can help you out with the tech platform. Who else have we got? There's a few. Oh, yeah. Go, Sunil.
Hi. Thanks for your time, Ron. Just as an aside, I did some work with John Fowley over the last couple of years. You might know of John.
Yeah,
swimming. Perhaps, yeah. He was a high performance manager at results that worked out. It's interesting bringing up that high performance mindset, and winning competitiveness to a business environment. Now, a lot of ex-athletes, elite athletes obviously do it, do the speaking to and all that kind of stuff, and you can learn a lot, from their single-minded dedication. My question is just around communication and how the different methods you've used to communicate to your swimmers, what you need from them, and that goes down to the session level. And obviously, before there's interesting ways of things there. We work with adults and children, but it's about how do you decide, I need to bring everyone here and give them a stern word, or I need to use a visual, or I need to send them something online. How do you decide what are the different ways to communicate what you need from individual athletes?
There's a lot to unpack there, because I'm a very big believer in my responsibility is to really know how to communicate to you personally, and at the same time to really know how to deliver a message to the group and get the message across to the multiple different ways that people take on information. So very early on for me, the two pieces to answer that is, the first thing is establish a very specific understanding for you as my athlete, or we'll go individually, what my expectation is based on your goals. So very much about, you want to achieve that, this is the standard, these are the things, and then I would keep you in line with those standards based on how you respond to me. So if you're someone that needs a bit of a clip, so be it. If you're someone needs a little bit, like I got to take a bit of time to communicate with you, and that's in the moment while we're training. But early days, I went through NLP and a bunch of different ways of communicating. And real simply put is, some people need a picture and need you to show them, draw it. Some people just listen. Some people need you to explain it. I was one of those people where I wouldn't do something unless you explained to me why I was doing it. And some people need to actually mimic what you're doing. That's the kinesthetic, we call that kinesthetic. So for me, I would just deliver everything in all four forms. So I have a whiteboard, I write up the session, and I know I learn real quick that you're a visual person, so I make sure you're looking. Somebody who's not looking, I don't worry about it. I just know they've turned to listen. That's how they listen more. And then there's somebody else that I need to actually get them to demonstrate, okay, Jason, I just want you to, show us the pull through, show us how you see the pull through. And I take the time to do that to ensure, because what would happen, and this is a bit of an exercise, if you talk to a group of athletes and you give them instruction one way, just verbally, you go, do this, do that, do this, and then you let them go, you're going to go, what the heck am I speaking another language? Half the group or even more might just go, what's going on? The other group, the group that listens and can connect. So if you do a whiteboard and then that, you get a little bit more buy-in, and then it's just about getting as much buy-in. So for me, it was about getting buy-in immediately. So I had to change my communication style. Within that group buy-in, I had to really make sure that I was dealing with everybody on a level that they fully grasp. To answer the question about when to give a group a spray, I'm very big on behaviors. So to me, I'm happy to give a spray to a group of, I don't believe their behaviors are exhibiting what is really required for them to be there. But in a way that just challenges, you've got this goal and that's your behavior. You guys as a group are not going to achieve this if you continue this way. So I think it's reading the moment. But for me, communication on all four forms is critical. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah.
Hey, Jace, can I just share my screen real quick? See if I can.
Please.
I want to show you this dinosaur on the. Just see if I can. Yeah, here we go. This is from. Can you see that? So that's the dinosaur. I'm going to send you all of these, but that's what an athlete did. They basically went around and drew a dinosaur and a tree while riding. That was their challenge. So I think it's pretty cool.
That was good.
Yeah, so that's something you can do. This bit of fun. I thought that was one of the cooler things I've seen.
Right, yeah. Who else have we got here that's just going around the place? Crookie, you got anything, mate, you want to throw up at Ro? You're sitting there very intently listening.
I have been listening. Just with the Olympics and whatnot, how it's been postponed now, how do you keep the athletes that were at the level they were at to do or get back to that level in another year down the track?
Well, obviously there's a bit of anxiety around whether, like, there was a lot of athletes that were starting into really good form and were showing great form. And so the initial impact was because the Olympics were being postponed till we didn't know when. So there was a fear. Once the Olympics were put on in next year at the same time, I think everybody relaxed because there's a good amount of time for them to get back in and start swimming. So it's pretty cruisy at the moment. Everybody's pretty cruisy. As far as what I think I've had athletes sit out for 6, 8 months or 10 months at a time doing nothing and get back in and get back to their best. I'm personally not worried, and I don't think many are very worried that they'll be able to get back to their best. I think the concern for me and the concern for us as a leadership group is the competition exposure and the opportunity to race and compete in the lead up to our trials. So that'll be somewhere from, December, January. If we're not racing in those months, and we're not racing definitely in February, that's where I'll have a bit of a concern, only because athlete training programs based on how the athletes perform under pressure and real pressure situations. And we may not have that exposure. That's my only concern. At the moment, it's going to happen, I think. We hope so. Jace and I hope so. But that's how I feel. I don't believe that. I think some of them will even be better next year with the break. I think the break's been good for a lot of them to learn a little bit about themselves and be a little bit more self-aware. I think the ones that I've been speaking to, I think, have been growing a lot in themselves.
Yep, I agree. Thank you.
Who else have we got there? Milne, you got anything, mate? You're the father of... Oh, sorry, Brad. We'll go Milne first and then you, Youngie. So, Milne, you look at it from two perspectives. You've got a son who's a footy player and you run a business and you're around a footy club. Any sort of insights or questions from Ro that you're interested in? Dog's looking good too, mate.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, mate.
Yep.
Yeah. First of all, I've got Rosie's a border collie, Rose, so she's not much of a swimmer. I don't know if you could.
The smartest dog on the planet, aren't they? Aren't they the smartest dog?
They certainly are, and she's waiting for me to take her for a walk.
Yes, I can tell.
She's hassling me. That's why she's all over me.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask more about the between the ears stuff.
Yeah.
And how much. I mean, we touched on it earlier as far as it's 98% between the ears. Tell me a bit about your theory on that.
Yeah, look, I think, I always ask when I talk to young junior athletes, and I ask them, I said, so how much when you swim when you've done your best performance, how much of it do you think is mental and how much of it do you think is physical? And, we usually come back with an 80-20. That's usually the consensus. And I said, okay, let's just agree it's 50-50. And I said, so when you're training, when you go into practice or training with your coaches, or you're doing just a regular school carnival or whatever it is, I said, are you mentally, are you training your mind at the same time you're training? But are you thinking about the performance you want to have down the track? And a lot of them go, no, I'm not. Even with dryland training, when you're doing a squat jump or whatever it might be, are you thinking about pushing off the wall? No, well, they're not training their mind. So for me, it's our responsibility as coaches to create environments where we force them to think and train their mind. So there's a physical and mental connection. So there's that development of understanding their adaptability and their abilities to perform in any way. And also it's to reward that. So if you're creating quite a complex, what I call an uncomfortable environment for them while they're training, and you're throwing things at them and they respond and achieve, it's because they've stayed focused mentally. You got to reward that. So you're making sure that they're aware of that they have that ability. And I think for us as our sport, and I will say this is our sport totally, because it's so easy to just throw them in the pool and just tell them to go up and down. And if anyone goes and jumps in for a swim, it's mindfulness. Your breathing's controlled. You basically can get into a nice state of Zen if you want. I mean, I swam a lot over my life, and I go numb most of the time. Just I drift off somewhere else or whatever, and without staying on task. So to me, it's critically important. What's really important is that we as coaches create that environment that really forces them out of their comfort zone and makes them have to be present and mentally aware. That's way adaptability is created. There's also resilience, and I think that's where our sport can get so much better, because we prepare these athletes physically. They get to an Olympic Games as an example of a really high pressure, but any level of performance for them at the highest is the same pressure. They don't know what's coming at them. They just it's totally unfamiliar. Like you can't even you just have to get them over prepared is what I would say, so they can handle anything.
Thank you, Rohan. Thank you for your time tonight.
No worries.
Ro, do you as a coach, are you helping to build people, or are you building an athlete? Are you building a person or an athlete?
For me, it's a person. For me, it's I think you develop the person, the performances come with it. So there's a really good book if you're looking for a good book to read. It's called The Double Goal Coach, GOAL. It's basically a book written about, and it's for parents as well as coaches. It talks about the statistics of if you just focus on the scoreboard and getting performance on the scoreboard and not looking at the development of the holistic athlete, that the statistics tell you that 0.02% of all participants in sport will make it to the professional level. So the rest of them are only going to have an experience across the organization. Yes, performance experiences, but I've written down here, like my closing, I'll say it now. For me, my experiences in being in a club, being in swimming, are all built on memories with my friends, relays, club things, just things. To me, the performances on the scoreboard are not my memories. My memories are the experiences with my lifelong friends that I'm still friends with today. My parents' best friends are swimming parents that they met when I was starting to swim. So to me, it's all about the development of the person, and you will get the performance, because if you build the trust and the relationships with people, they will go to another level for you when asked. And that to me is a gateway to performance beyond just demanding it. So it's the holistic person.
So we've got just a couple of minutes to go. Does anyone have any other questions? Or Cookie, was that a hand up, or you just shooting a fly there, mate? No, just head back on the chin. Cookie, you right? You're still on mute, mate. If you want to ask something, fire away.
I have.
Hang on. Cookie's coming.
Just to round us out, Rohan, our using this reset as well to help us, I guess, reinvigorate and develop our coaching culture. What are the top couple of things you'd kick off when we get everyone back?
One of the things I think the social learning piece is something I started by looking. I've always been curious about with coaches, and within swimming it's one thing, but other sports. But what we've really worked on is creating a social learning environment amongst coaches, and that is getting together frequently to talk about what we do and how we go about it. Mm-hmm. I think we learn off each other. So I think, to me, if you do have that, great, really fire it up and feed it, bring in people to challenge the thoughts and the processes. But if you don't, I think that's really where you can make massive gains, where coaches working together, not necessarily on just the technical and tactical aspects of it. That's part of it, but also just about the management, the creating of the environments, and just generally the vision of the club. Like, where are we heading as an organization? How are we going to get there? How are we going to influence the groups? And I think that, to me, is I probably would say, and I understand because sometimes you get into the volunteer situations and, you know, it's like what time, but we've just proven that we can have a 1 hour catch up on Zoom and it's, you know, we don't have to leave our house. There's no reason to not do these types of things as a, you know, once a week just to get together. The coach can have a beer sitting there, whatever it might be, but just to talk about and to talk about the where you want to end up. And it could be a tactical conversation about what's happening from that point of view, or it just could be about how can we get greater participation or how can we create greater retention. But I just think we've all got the answers. Everybody's got an answer to a question, and if we're all talking, pretty much we're gonna share it. So that to me is a real piece that I've been engaging in and getting coaches engaged in. It seems to be working well. It's definitely something we do on the national team. We're all very, very close friends, and we socialize obviously remotely all the time because we're never in the same place, but we travel together, and it needs to be done all the way through, I think.
Yeah, that's great. I like the idea of even just using the Zoom to make it simple. At least it's then an hour and people can get on with their lives rather than a whole night.
Well, if you say, let's meet at the club, for instance, and yeah, there's times to get together, but say if we're going to meet at the club at 7 o'clock for this catch up, you know, we'd all drive there. I don't know where it is, but let's say you got the drive there and then you got the drive, you know, you're going to be looking at 2 hours minimum. This is an hour of everybody's time. You know, it's much easier to make yourself available is what I'm saying. And I think once everybody gets comfortable in this space, it's quite powerful because, you know, it's just, I've found it to be really good. I think this plus the face-to-face stuff is, you know, really powerful.
Yeah, thanks. That's great.
So Ro, just a last thing from us. Thanks, mate. Are there any, what's been your, so you've coached Olympic gold medals, so I'm fascinated, and you and I have spoken about this. Your memories are about experiences and friendships. And somewhere in there's a gold medal, but it's not top of your, like it's something you're enormously proud of, but the richness in your coaching life hasn't come from, you know, gold medal success. That's been great. But it's a really interesting thing. I think in footy, there's a real obsession around premierships and all that sort of stuff, and they matter and they're awesome. But I'm really intrigued by and it's not just Ro, but you really value the experiences along the way. And you just want to sort of finish with anything on that before we wrap up, mate?
Yeah, I think in relation to, say, Beijing, I enjoyed the experience much more today than I did at the time, because there was a lot of pressure that you felt, but I managed it well. But yeah, it was the athletes' moment, and well, the athletes. There was another athlete in relay, but it was their moment. There was some really enjoyable things in there, but for me, I was just relieved more for them. And now I look back and think, okay, that was a great journey to be participating and what I did to create the environment for that athlete to achieve. So I'll probably reflect much more favorably on it. So I have a great memory in that space. But for me, you know, my Beijing memory, for instance, is when the Olympics finished, we all wanted to go on the walk for the Great Wall Walk, right? And it was like 35 degrees that day, and it was 8 o'clock. We had Laurie Lawrence had organized 2 buses for people to go on to take us to the wall, and we all signed up for it. And we'd all gone out all night, and there's a few of us that got on the bus like really hungover. And we're like, okay, we're going to go to the wall. We're going to go off the bus. We're going to go stand on the wall, get a few photos, and come back. So as we're going there, Laurie Lawrence is on the microphone telling us what we're doing. Now we're going to show up at this place, and then the buses are going to drop us, and we're going to go on the wall, and we're going to walk up the wall, and then the bus is going to meet us at this other place. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, I wasn't really paying attention. So somebody in the back goes, hey, Laurie, how far is it from the place you're dropping us off to where we're getting picked up? Oh, no, it's not very far at all. I was like, how far is it? It's like 10.5K. 10.5K. Has anyone been on the Beijing Wall in China? 10.5K. This thing is like literally rubble. You go to the one place, it's really nice, but then it's rubble. We're literally climbing on rubble. We're hungover. It's 35 degrees. I literally thought I was with Vince Rowley and Michael Bowl, who are 2 of the older coaches. I thought these guys are going to keel over on me. That's my memory of that whole experience. And being with 2 marathon runners who said it was harder doing that than the marathon they'd run 2 days before. It was just like, it was a very funny experience. So for me, those experiences always stand out. Performances come and go, and I'm motivated for performances. I'm motivated to see people achieve, but it's just nice to be a part of the experience. For me, that's what I look back and say, you know, being an observer more for me is the fun stuff. So for me, clubs are about those experiences, and I think you know, yeah, make memories. You know, make the memories, and performances will be part of that. Don't worry. Like, what I would say is feed that competitive spirit, but feed other things as well. Feed the social component and the other aspects. You know, they're important.
I can't think of a better note to finish on, Ro. Incredibly grateful for you giving up your time. I know you're working all sorts of hours at the moment, and we really appreciate it. And one day we'll get you down to the valley, mate, and you can come and have a squeeze. It's not a bad joint, but from us to you, really appreciate your time tonight, mate. It's been really valuable, and we'll send you a hoodie.
Thank you. You know, I love talk. I mean, we're all in this together for the same reason, so I'm happy to share. And yeah, I wish you all the best, and I definitely will be down on the sidelines cheering them on for sure, and having a bit of a beer maybe on the side if I can.
You're a good man.
All right.
Thanks, Coach. See you tomorrow, mate.
See you guys. Yeah, see you tomorrow. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rohan.
See ya.
Thanks, Rohan.